Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Bracer Deep Dive of every controller ever used in Smash Bros. History. We're going to look at the controller, or multiple controllers, that have been used for each game, and I'm going to give them an overview and a score for a few different categories. Before we go on, I must give a shout out to my friend Jordan for helping me come up with this topic and formatting this here video. It's been in the works for about a week and a half now, and if it wasn't for his help, I can assure you that this topic would not have even crossed my mind at all, let alone for this week. So big ups to Jordan on that for sure. So naturally, as unnatural as this controller was, we're going to be looking at the Nintendo 64 controller. As I'm sure most of you all know, the Smash series started on the N64. So the controller for this console was the first controller ever used for the series. And I'll be the first to admit, its design was always odd. I always thought the banana color scheme was appropriate for the Donkey Kong 64 controller, as I always referred to this one as the banana controller, or better yet, the alien controller. 3 prongs for whatever reason, you only ever hold the one that has the analog stick and the one that has the A, B, and other buttons, while the prong with the D-pad is pretty much never held. I mean, we don't have 3 arms. Also, instead of a C stick, you had a bunch of C buttons above A and B. And in the days of Smash 64, they were for jumping, much like what the X and Y buttons would be used for today. So I always found it to be an odd controller myself, certainly playable. You got used to it, but it would probably still be pretty foreign to many of you younger players nowadays. However, I give it props for one major thing. Since it's a 90s controller, it was built to last. A lot of those old school controllers from Nintendo could take a beating. I still have a bad temper when it comes to games frustrating me, and it was worse as a kid, because you do stupid things like throw the damn things. But my Super Nintendo and N64 controllers always lasted, even through the most hardcore of controller teching. And through the years of having them, their buttons never started sticking either, which is something that will be mentioned upon with other controllers coming up quickly. So here are my grades for the Nintendo 64 controller when it comes to Super Smash Bros. Play. Comfort gets a 6 out of 10. As I said, the shape is kind of awkward, and there have been much more comfortable controllers that have come after it, but it's still not the dirt worst, so it gets a middle of the pack score there. In use, only for retro games who like playing old consoles. So that'd be like a 0 out of 10. Durability gets a tank out of 10, which is a perfect 10 out of 10. Back in the day, I'm telling you, was when they made the most hardcore controllers that could last. And innovation gets an 8 out of 10. The reason being is because it introduced using an analog stick or control stick for 3D gaming to a Nintendo platform. Every console since has had a joystick now, and the N64 controller was the first of its kind to move on past using the D-pad like the earlier Super Nintendo and NES did. Next up, we have everyone's oh-so-favorite Smash controller. It was first used as the only controller for Melee, and has been playable with every generation of Smash that has come afterwards. You know this controller to be the GameCube controller. It's the undisputed fan favorite. There are a couple certainties in this life. Death waits for no one, and Smash tournaments will be played with a GameCube controller. But I now bet you're all wondering what I think of it. Well, the button shape and placements are rather unconventional, which made sense for the time. I mean, we were just coming off the N64 having controllers looking like they were made for 3-armed creatures, so Nintendo has been known for unorthodox controller designs. In fact, they've been known for that for a long time now, as we will mention with some future controllers that were used for Smash, but let's stick to the GameCube for now. The A button is massive, there's a tiny B button that's to the left of the A, you have jump buttons X and Y positioned above this gigantic A button, as well as the C stick that was introduced with this controller, which was basically a shortcut to smash attacks without having to input your analog stick with the A button. Taunts, of course doable, on the D-pad. Now, despite its unorthodox layout, the fans of Smash just adored this controller. It's like all they can play on, and I wonder why that is. Perhaps it's just the right size. Perhaps all attack layouts have become muscle memory on this particular controller. But whatever the case, to this day, it is still the controller that's synonymous with Smash worldwide. And with this being said, nearly 19 years after the GameCube and Melee launched, and well over a decade since the GameCube got the axe in production, it's quite impressive the lifespan this controller has had. But let's give it a little bit of a closer review, shall we? At times, I find the analog stick can be a pinch too stiff, and it also has this weird springy effect when it bounces back into place that's never really bothered me. But I do feel these days, when it comes to pulling off aerials and tilts, I'm having much more difficulty trying to do those moves with this controller. Perhaps that's just a me thing, but it's going to be considered when grading this oh so precious one. As far as comfort is concerned, I can't argue with you there. There's something about the shape that makes this controller feel great in the hands while playing the series. It's why it's still very much around today. Therefore, I give it a solid 9.5 out of 10 when it comes to comfort. In use is also going to get a pretty high rating. In fact, when it comes to being in use, it gets a perfect 10 out of 10 for being the controller used by a vast majority of the community, whether they be tournament players or casual. But I'm going to slam it a bit on durability, though. From my experience with this controller, I give its durability a measly 5 out of 10. Oh, Braster, you say, how can you slander the best Smash controller there is? Well, the A button will begin to stick. It could take 6 months, a full year, 2 years, but eventually, that A button is going to start sticking. And sometimes the analog stick wears out quick too. That has happened to a handful of my GameCube controllers over the years. Not something you hear often, but it has been my experience with them. As far as innovation is concerned, I'm going to give it a 5. It was just another more modern day controller from Nintendo, but it did add in an extra joystick, that being the C-stick, and, other than that, it has some more finer triggers on the back of it, like most modern day controllers do, but it really didn't do anything all that new. Now we move on to the Wii, which introduced 3 new ways to play Brawl and had 4 total, counting the backwards compatible GameCube controller. The first of these new options was simply the Wii Remote on its side. All I can tell you about this is if you enjoy the challenge of playing Smash with an NES controller, then this is the style for you. You move your character with the damn D-pad. The B trigger is easy to fumble for defense, a la shielding and such, and of course 1 and 2 are your attack buttons. 1 for specials, and 2 for regular attacks. So if you'd rather play with a joystick, they had 2 more options for you on the Wii aside from the GameCube controller. There was the Wii Remote with Nunchuck combination. The Nunchuck was your joystick for movement, with a trigger of its own for defense. Then the A button on the front of the Wii Remote was used for regular attacks, and the B button at the back was used for your specials. I personally didn't dig this style of gameplay at all, but my friend Jordan, the one who helped me come up with this here concept, he found his groove on Brawl with this style of play, and later transitioned it to the Wii U, which we will get to in a moment. But there is one last control type I will address. Last, and certainly least for a reason, is the classic controller, which was another accessory you could attach to the Wii Remote, much like the Nunchuck. Now, I didn't leave it last because I intended to shit on it. In fact, I left it last because it's legitimately the only controller I never ever got to play Smash with in my life. So I have no idea what its comfort would have been for me, and all the rest that comes with the scores that I've been giving out. So on categories, comfort, durability, and so on, the classic controller gets a big old unknown out of 10. But if any of you in the comments section either played Brawl with the classic controller, or even Wii U with the classic controller, because of course we'll get into how you can play it on the Wii U in a bit, do let me know in the comments section, because I legitimately have no experience whatsoever with this control type. As for the Wii Remote and Nunchuck combination, the Nunchuck for comfort, in my opinion, gets a very low 4 out of 10. But as for my buddy Jordan, who played with this combination for a long time, he gave it a much higher rating of 7 out of 10. We both agreed that the Nunchuck had decent durability, and agreed to give this little accessory a 7.5 out of 10. And since it's just an attachable joystick, we didn't find it too innovative and settled that score, much like with the GameCube, at a measly 5 out of 10. Nor was the classic controller innovative in any way either. Its main purpose was a decent way for people to play the Virtual Console. Now we grade the Wii Remote on its own. Comfort was awful, trying to play Smash like it was an NES game. Very restrictive and so easy to do constantly wrong inputs. But I mean, like anything, it's playable if you get used to it, I suppose, but I never really did. So I'm going to feel a little generous and give it, on a comfort level, a very low 4 out of 10. Like its accessories, none of these controllers are in use today, only for those who want to collect Wii stuff, so I guess we gotta give it, as far as being in use is concerned, a 0 out of 10. You know, unless you want to get them and put yourselves back into the timeline of 12 years ago. My Wii Remotes were always functional with batteries until the day I donated them. I have no problem giving them, on a durability level, an 8 out of 10 on that scale. And lastly, the motion-sensitive gimmick that the Wii Remote was made for was very revolutionary for its time. It was doing so well that Xbox and PlayStation took notice and tried to do copycat things later on for that alone. You have to give the innovation of the Wii Remote a decently high score, and I will, because I'm going to give it a big-time 9 out of 10. Now we move on to the long-forgotten, but not too far-off era of the Wii U. What many consider Nintendo's biggest bust when it comes to home consoles. It featured 2 new ways to play Smash that were exclusive to it. It had 7 playstyles total. The 4 we mentioned from the Wii, since all that stuff was backwards compatible from Wii to Wii U. And once again, the GameCube controller. This time playable via a new adapter they came up with that was USB. So the 3 new playstyles that were introduced during the Wii U were as follows. We'll start with talking about that giant-ass tablet. If Ridley was the character that was too big to be in Smash, then this was the controller that was too big to play Smash. Huge gap between the joystick and the cluster of attack and jump buttons, but this beast somehow felt comfortable in my hands. I'll be completely honest here. This tablet was what I played Smash Wii U with for almost its entire lifespan. My friend Jordan hated this thing, and he probably shares the opinion I expect most of you to have. Was it stupidly large? Yes. Was it awkward? Hell yeah. But somehow, I managed to play on it just fine, and it became comfortable for me. That was, of course, until I finally got a couple of Wii U Pro controllers in the last year of Smash Wii U's lifespan. Now, this thing was trying to mimic an Xbox controller or something. You had your regular joystick for movement on the left, and on the right, you had the other joystick for shortcut A attacks above your regular attack buttons. Another odd design by Nintendo, because it really should have been the other way around, with the shortcut stick on the bottom with the attack buttons above it. But at least it's smaller, because really it's just a shrunk down version of the Wii U tablet. It pretty well has the exact same button layout, but on a much smaller scale. And the last new controller type that you could use for Wii U, as well as use on its own, with its own unique version of Smash 4, if you want to even consider it unique, would be the Nintendo 3DS. Now, I muddled around with it one time when a buddy of mine connected it to my Wii U console. I borrowed a couple people's and during some of my classes back in my college days a handful of times with their 3DSs, but I always got the impression that Smash didn't translate well to handheld, which we'll go into further in just moments, but yeah, I didn't really care for playing it this way. Maybe it was some people's cup of tea, but it certainly wasn't mine. And to be fair, if you liked it in handheld, I think that's a more appropriate way, because it really is its own thing. I don't think I should be grading this to any degree due to not owning a 3DS, not playing for it long term. So once again, I'm going to give this on all scores, much like the classic controller, a big old unknown out of 10. So I'm exempting it from the score sheet, essentially, is what I'm doing. However, I can still say that if I were to give it one score, as far as in use is concerned, I'll give it the full 10 out of 10 there, as people still do buy Smash for their 3DSs today, and it's still a console that, believe it or not, has some support still. So now it's time to grade the Wii U controllers I did play long term with. Even though I'm the only one who dug it, I'm still giving the Wii U tablet a good 7 out of 10 rating on the comfort level. But since I did shit on Jordan's playstyle with an nunchuck earlier today, I'm allowing him to be devil's advocate on mine, and he gave the tablet a very low 3 out of 10, which might be closer to some of your guys' point of view. Everything Wii U is dead now, so none of it is in use at all anymore, so 0 out of 10 there. For durability, my Wii U tablet still works fine after over a 5-year period, which gets some checks in my books for a rating of 8 out of 10. And for attempting to cash in on the tablet market with a unique controller like this was certainly ambitious on Nintendo's part, but it never did take full advantage of what it could do, and it didn't sell good at all. So therefore we cannot give it a super high rating here, but for the attempt alone, I personally give the concept a solid 8 out of 10 for what it tried to do, as well as being the first controller to read and save amiibo figures. People forget these little guys started on the Wii U. They are used a lot now in the days of the Switch, but they had very humble beginnings on the Wii U tablet, which also gives it a few more points on the innovation scale. And lastly, we have the Bat Control. I mean the Wii U Pro Controller. Sorry about that, folks, but I really think it looks like something out of Bruce Wayne's Batcave with those pointy ends that it has. You know, it has a similar feel to, say, an Xbox controller, which is solid. But of course, Nintendo still made it a tad awkward by having your shortcut stick above your attack options for this game. But still, I give this controller's comfort a middle of the pack 6 out of 10. Its durability, I think, is held up quite nicely, so on a durable scale, for me, it gets an 8 out of 10. And since it is just another average run-of-the-mill video controller, it's going to get a mere and lowly 3 out of 10 for innovation, because it was never designed to be innovative in the first place. And again, much like anything Wii U, Nintendo has completely put an axe to production of this controller, and it certainly isn't in use at all today. So for in use, it gets, much like most of the other options on this list, and the majority of them, a 0 out of 10. Unless you're going back to play Smash 4, but why would you when Ultimate is out? Moving on. And now, the last of all Smash controllers is of course going to end with the Nintendo Switch. There are 3 controller types for this game. Once again, a returning GameCube controller via another USB adapter. That takes a spot. We've already discussed that one at large. The other 2 new controllers are, of course, the Joy-Cons and the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. Let's first start off with the Joy-Cons, because you can play with these little buggers in like 4 different ways. You can play with a sideways Joy-Con. So if you play with 2 that are sideways, those would count as 2 controllers. But that button layout is so small, I've never even attempted to try it, and I wonder how, if any, madmen have pulled that off. You can play with dual Joy-Cons in the grip or without it, like as if you were holding a couple Wii remotes. and the button configuration is the same. I used to play with them in the grip for a while after launch. Like when the game launched, I got it about a month after it launched, and when, say, my first 6 months, I played with the Joy-Cons in the grip. And of course, that wasn't until I did decide to get better controllers. And lastly, for the Joy-Cons, you can play with them attached to the Switch itself to play Ultimate in handheld mode, which again I have tried ever so briefly and did not like at all. So I purchased a Switch Pro controller, and it has a sleek and minimalistic design that makes sense. It fixes a couple errors that were made with the Wii U Pros, and it's about as close to a basic modern day controller that you're ever going to get from Nintendo. And I love the mobility of this joystick for tricky attacks like aerials and tilts and smash. Personally, I find it smooth like butter, and for the longest time I was playing with a GameCube controller. But having recently switched, yeah, no pun intended, to playing with the Pro more over the winter to present, I'll be honest and say the more I play it, the more I dig it. And that was something me and Jordan could really agree on when it came to Ultimate. So now come the scores for the final controllers of this chronology. When it comes to comfort, for the Joy-Cons in any way, I can't play them anymore. They used to be tolerable in the grips, now I can't even play that way competently anymore. Never will I attempt to play with a Joy-Con on its side, and no, I do not dig handheld mode at all. They get a 3 out of 10 for comfort in Smash from me. They get a full 10 out of 10 for being in use, since they're a controller for a current generation console. Durability, they get only a 4 out of 10 from me, due to the drifting and other problems that have seemed to have developed quickly within them. Even I have been a victim of this, and many more have as well. Innovation, I gave them a generous 8.5 out of 10, because they can make a home console turn into a playable handheld device merely by attaching them to the damn thing, which effectively makes the Switch the first successful hybrid console of its kind. And that's darn cool. Not to mention, there's also that touchscreen ability that they kind of took from the Wii U and we'll just say made it more successful. Gotta get some points there, you know what I'm saying? Then we go to my beloved Nintendo Switch Pro controller. It feels perfect in my hands as far as comfort is concerned, so I'll be brave and give it a perfect 10 out of 10. In use, once again, much like the Joy-Cons, is a perfect 10 out of 10, since it's a controller for a current generation console. Durability gets an 8.5 out of 10 from me. The damn thing's still working pretty much just as well as when I first bought it, but the jury can still be out on that one if you wish. And again, it's a basic modern controller, so it gets a mere 3 out of 10 as far as innovation is concerned. But, as I said, it was made for comfort in a modern style of gameplay rather than to be extra creative and out there. And now it is time for the cheapest of plugs, and thankfully I don't have to spout them all off because you can see them on the graphic in front of you right now. But I'm going to officially announce that tomorrow night, and I'm considering Saturdays, and some days it'll be on Thursdays instead of Fridays, I'll be streaming Smash Ultimate Battle Arenas on Twitch. I will do a post here on YouTube when I plan to go live, much like I did last week. So let's just keep our social distancing going on, keep practicing that, only go out when it's absolutely necessary for food and other such needs, and most importantly of all, stay safe, my friends, during this dire time of need. See you all on the flip side, and thank you so very much for watching.